Hello, you lovely lot, and welcome back to Sabbatical Stories. I'm your host, Bex Thomas, a career transition and sabbatical coach, and today I am coming to you from Vietnam. I am back in Hanoi, so please do excuse the sound of busy Vietnamese streets. This podcast exists to inspire courage and normalise taking a break from your career. And if these conversations resonate, please do follow, rate and share the show. It means a lot and it helps more people discover these stories. Today, I'm joined by Anna Izvorska, whose career has spanned nearly 2 decades in humanitarian crisis response with the UN and Red Cross. We talk a lot on this podcast about taking a break to find purpose and meaning in our work. But Anna's story proves that even purpose-driven careers can reach a turning point. After years on the front line of global humanitarian work and reaching her 20-year career goals, Anna chose to take a sabbatical to redefine what impact meant for her next chapter. We explore what motivates someone to pause a meaningful, purpose-driven career. And I love how Anna shares how she intentionally designed her sabbatical and even drew a visual career map to explore future possibilities and used volunteering in animal welfare as a sort of low-risk way to prototype a potential new path. We talk honestly about what happens when returning to work doesn't quite go to plan and how a career break can even unexpectedly evolve into redundancy. It's truly one of those magical stories woven with fate, misaligned timing, then perfect timing, and ultimately a really happy ending. It is an amazing story, so let's dive in. Deep down, you've tried, dig deep, search wide. Enjoy your climb, it's all for you. Hi Anna, and welcome to Sabbatical Stories. It's so wonderful to have you here.
Thank you, Bex. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
No, our pleasure. I always like to ask guests to introduce themselves. Who better to do it than you? So could you please give us an introduction to Anna and your sabbatical story?
Yes, sure. Thank you. So, as you said, my name is Anna. I have been a humanitarian worker throughout my professional life. This has been my chosen career path ever since I was about 21. I worked for the Red Cross and for UN agencies. And for the last 9 years, I have worked internationally in complex emergencies, which is basically the humanitarian jargon for places where there are a few crises on top of each other, like, for example, conflict or insurgency, extreme weather events, causes that cause displacements or general disruption of life. So I worked in Libya, Iraq, Afghanistan, and although my latest posting duty station was in the beautiful country of Georgia, I think for a few reasons, it felt like it was time already to take a step back and pause and rethink what I wanted to do professionally. Because at that point, I had already achieved the professional goals that I had set for myself 20 years earlier. I went on sabbatical, and going on sabbatical was a great decision. I had a wonderful time, but it was also full of adventures that I designed for myself. And I had a chance to reflect a lot, to reconnect with friends and family members, and ultimately to do exactly this, to take a step back professionally, to decide what I wanted to do and to make steps to recalibrate my career path.
So the why behind the sabbatical sounds as though it was to really cement what the next chapter looked like and what the next course would be. How easy was it to take a sabbatical?
Yes, I think that there were a few factors that came together. In my case, I had already started to think about a sabbatical for professional purposes because I had reached certain professional goals that I had set for myself many years before. And I wasn't entirely sure whether I wanted to continue further along this path or to do something slightly different or a lot different. So I had these reflections. There was no urgency to it, but I was already kind of going there in my mind. Also, I had a practical reason. My mother wasn't well and my attention was required back home in Bulgaria. I think that if I didn't have these doubts and these reflections about my professional path, I probably would have found a way to deal with my mom's health in a way that enabled me to keep my job at
Mm.
the time. But because it was like compounded reasons, I decided that this is the moment to take a sabbatical. My mother needed me. I hadn't been back in my home country for longer than a week for the last 10 years or 9 years. I would come back home literally for 1 week every year. So it would have been a chance to also reconnect with friends, to rest, to research, to do things that I wanted to do, or to travel, whatever I wanted to do, and also to have a think about what I wanted to achieve as my next professional goal. So it was yeah, these two reasons came together. And in terms of practicalities, I usually reach decisions pretty quickly. I don't take a lot of time to make decisions. It's not the kind of person I am. This particular decision took quite a long time. It took me probably 2 months to decide it. For me, that's a very long time because I had certain hesitations. Georgia is a beautiful country. I didn't necessarily want to leave it. So I was talking to friends and family. It was not very useful. I found out that the job of your friends and your family is to support you in whatever you decide to do, but they weren't necessarily very useful in for me to achieve clarity of mind and to decide whether to take a sabbatical or not.
So interesting.
I had a one session with a career coach. I needed to bounce off my fears and my hopes and my
Mm.
concerns off someone who is neutral. I found out that friends will either tell you, you can do it, we believe in you, of course you will be fine. Or the opposite, they project their fears on you and they say, yeah, but are you sure you might not be able to find a job after? What are you going to do? What if you run out of money? So both perspectives were not useful.
Mm.
It took only one session with a career coach. The session with her was incredibly useful because she acted as a mirror to me,
Mm.
because she was a neutral party who was just hearing what I had to say to her and she was reflecting it back at me. Somehow I saw myself through eyes that I thought were very realistic, not too pink and not too dark. So that enabled me really to appreciate myself and to decide, you know what, I'm a I'm a professional. I will land on my feet. I will always, of course, I will always find a job. So that's how the decision was made, and I submitted my papers to go on sabbatical.
I love that, and you're so right. There's so many conversations I've had where the advice is actually come to the decision yourself, really own the narrative, believe in why you're doing it, and then share with friends and family. Because normally they will lean to that whole support of what you've decided, whereas they can certainly muddy the waters and almost have you going around in circles in your own head if you actually include them on the journey. So it's fascinating that you say that. I totally understand and can empathize with that as well. Once the decision was made and you put those papers in, talk us through how you approached your sabbatical to satisfy the why. So satisfy exploring, whether you were to continue down the humanitarian route or, what next looked like.
I drew a map for myself.
Wow.
Because one day I was sitting and thinking, okay, what do I do now? Where do I go from here? And I literally put a circle on a piece of paper. This is Georgia. I'm in Tbilisi right now. Where do I go from here? From this point on, I designed 3 paths. The first path was if I wanted to stay with the UN agency that I worked for, what would I do? If I wanted to continue working on migration and displacement issues, then I would look for short-term assignments in different countries so that I can have, short gigs that would allow me to explore another context, but not to commit myself very quickly to moving to another country. And then what would be the goal? The goal would eventually be to moving to our headquarters of the organization that I was working for, because this was something that my husband and I had decided that we're not going to work in emergencies anymore. We want to go to a regional office or our headquarters and try to influence policy decisions or just contribute to various country offices operations from that point of view. So that was my goal. And then the second string that came out of this place where I am now, Tbilisi, was okay. What if I wanted to work for another organization, either another non-profit organization which works in humanitarian settings, or maybe another UN agency? So I started thinking about, okay, if I wasn't working for the UN agency that I work for, which one would I want to work in terms of the issues that they were dealing with? And I selected a few that I have always liked, and I started applying for jobs. And I literally started marking on this picture. It became into a drawing now. I started marking my applications. And then the third line of possibility, I guess, professionally, was animal welfare and animal rights. This is a professional area that I had started to be interested in. I've always liked animals, but I had started to be interested professionally in animal welfare, in animal advocacy, really. And I had started to research what animal advocacy organizations are doing, what are the core issues, the main issues that they're working on and advocating for right now. I realized that it's a very professionally organized activity. They have advocacy groups which are working at high level political forums, such as the UN or the European Union, to try to influence legislation that would improve animal welfare. So I found that very interesting. So I thought that that would be a great third kind of string of possibility. And that would have looked like looking for a job or also volunteering, learning about the topics that animal welfare organizations are working on, because this was a professionally new avenue for me. I didn't know much. It was a compass for me, this map that I drew. And once I drew it, then it became a living document, because every time I would apply for a job or every time I have a conversation with someone who works in a certain professional field that I'm interested in, or I want to volunteer somewhere, I would put it on this map, and it became a living thing. And it would help me also measure the progress, maybe not the achievements, but it definitely measured my progress and my activity towards achieving all of these three goals that I had allowed for the possibility that I might achieve. And I used this drawing for many months. It was right in front of me, and I would mark things on it. But after several months, it was at the back of my desk, and one day I found it, and it was almost destroyed. Like I think the cat had started biting it, or because it was some of the things were in pencil, so they had started to kind of vanish. And I found it, and I thought, this looks terrible now, and I threw it away. I thought of keeping it, but I thought, you know what? It did its job. I'm there now. I don't need it anymore. I don't need to keep it. So I threw it away. But yeah, it was very useful tool. I think I'm sorry now that I threw it away, because I have told my sabbatical story a few times to many of my friends, and I've always wanted to show them that drawing so that they could see. But anyways, as I said, it did its job. So.
It is absolutely fascinating how you approached it, because Anna, in my program, and it's not anything to do with the sabbatical, but it's the career transition program that I run. One of the 6 sessions is all about what I call next possible profiles or next possible chapters. And it's exactly that, thinking up, if not this, then what? You know, what could I do? Is it a total reinvention? I had somebody who mentioned, oh, I might want to actually open a dachshund hotel and walk dachshunds for a living. You know, that was a total and utter reinvention to what she was currently doing. Or it might be just a little bit of a reframe in what they're currently doing. But it is about thinking about what are the possibilities, like blue sky thinking, what would I really love to do? And, you know, what could they look like? So that is, I would love to see the drawing. I also think it's quite beautiful that you did throw it away and that it served a purpose. And, you know, I'm sure you can describe it as you have now to individuals if they want and need to have that sort of support and I suppose steer on how they could recreate their own. And the other thing is, I think everybody's journey is so unique and so their own that almost if you showed somebody it, I'm not sure whether exactly the same thing would work for everybody. Whereas I suppose if you sort of paint the concept and the picture of thinking about and dreaming about your next profiles, that actually that works for individuals. How long did you plan to have off?
I planned to have a year off. It's kind of a standard period for sabbaticals that my organization allows. You can apply for 1 year and then you can extend into a second year if you want to,
Okay.
and no more. You could apply for less, but nobody does because it's more difficult to extend it than to shorten it.
Yeah, okay.
So I applied for 1 year, knowing that it's possible to extend it if I wanted. Another very interesting aspect of this, however, is that in the organization that I worked for, allowed for the possibility, if you're free, if you're on a sabbatical, you are able to go on short. We call them short-term assignments. It basically means that you go to another country office, to a country office of the organization anywhere in the world, where they might need you for a few months, 1, 2, or 3, typically. And this is something that is a possibility for anyone, whether they're on a sabbatical or not. But when you're on a sabbatical, it's usually easier for you to deploy immediately.
Of course.
So sometimes people who are on a sabbatical are almost used as a roster for this kind of short-term deployments, because just you're free, and if they invite you or you apply, you go, and then your sabbatical is automatically extended with the same duration of time that you took to go to a short-term assignment.
Okay. And is it expected that if you're invited, you have to go?
No.
Is your No, okay.
No, generally you have to apply anyways.
Okay.
There is a system, you can apply, and then if they invite you, you can go, or you don't have to go. So in fact, it took me a little bit to slow down, to be honest.
I'm
The
sure.
moment I went to sabbatical, I had things to do, personal things to do. I was setting up an apartment. I was taking care of my mom. And then suddenly I said, okay, so what do I do now? Let me go on a short-term assignment.
So did you go?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. I went to another incredibly beautiful country, Armenia. There was a crisis at the time there. This was the end of 2023. And Azerbaijan had, within 1 day, taken over the region of Nagorno-Karabakh, where there is an Armenian enclave of ethnic Armenians. And 100,000 people were displaced in a matter
Wow.
of 5 days.
Wow.
And in such circumstances, usually there is an immediate humanitarian response in order to provide assistance and protection to people, whatever they need. And usually there is something called a scale up, which basically means that the existing UN agencies within the country where a crisis happens immediately deploy more people so that they can have more staff on the ground to increase whatever program is needed in order to assist the people who are in need. So in that framework, I went to Armenia for a month to support the response to this displacement crisis. It was incredible because in such circumstances, you feel that your work is meaningful and you feel very motivated and you work very hard. You almost don't sleep, but you know why you're doing it. And also knowing that you're on a short-term assignment, you know that you will have time to sleep later. So, and I've been to a few of these short-term assignments. It's some of the most meaningful work that you can do. So I did go to Armenia, and then for a month, and then I came back to my home country, Bulgaria. And at that point, it was winter. It was November. It was gloomy. It was dark. I had nothing to do already. The whole hectic time immediately after the start of the sabbatical had passed.
Yeah. Did you have your map?
I did have my map, and my deployment to Armenia was, of course, indicated there. Once I went, I put it there on the map. This was part of my first string. If I stayed with my UN agency, what would I do? And part of what I wanted to do was go on a few short-term assignments before hopefully finding a position in Geneva. Yeah, so I came back to Bulgaria, and that was the moment when I really started to slow down. 3 months into my sabbatical, it finally kicked in. It finally landed with me that I actually had nothing to do now. I was free. No emails were coming. At the beginning, I felt a little bit down, also because the weather was terrible, being November. But over the next several weeks leading up to Christmas, I really started to appreciate the slow. Everything just slowed down, and I started a little bit discovering what I wanted to do next. I signed up for salsa classes. It's something that is incredibly fun. so much fun in November because you're coming into the salsa studio from the gloomy,
Yeah.
rainy, and then they play music, and all the people are beautiful and they smell nice and they're smiling, and suddenly the mood l- lifts like you couldn't believe. So it was amazing. So this really lifted me up. And I started planning, okay, what do I actually want to do next? What is my next step now?
Mm.
I have time to think about it. It's Christmas, nothing is happening anyways. So let's see what I will be doing in January. I decided to pursue the animal welfare angle, the third string of my map. I thought, okay, I've already had a conversation with a few people who work in animal welfare in order to understand what their work is really, what their job is, and I had applied for a few positions unsuccessfully. So I thought maybe I should volunteer. I understand why I was not successful in my applications. So I found two volunteering projects. One of them was more on the research side, and then I decided to volunteer with actual animals. So over the course of this November, I was looking for volunteering opportunities and I found one which turned out to be amazing. And I put it in motion. And consequently, a few months later, in the spring of 2024, I went for a month in South Africa to a sanctuary called Lions Rock. It's a sanctuary for big cats,
Wow.
and it's run by one of the biggest animal welfare organizations, Four Paws. They have about 100 big cats, lions and tigers, predominantly a few leopards. It's a big facility with a lot of land, huge enclosures for the animals in order to feel that they're almost in the wild. So they ensure that they're species appropriate enclosures, and
Mm.
they take a very good care of them. They have veterinarians on staff living there in the sanctuary. So it was incredible to find out how much in such sanctuaries they care for the animals. And I was very privileged to be part of the team for a month. And I was assigned kind of attached to the animal welfare team. They assigned to me a few animals, about, I don't know, 15 lions and tigers. And my job was to go and visit them every day and to spend some time with them. And they brief you, even as a non-professional, the animal caretakers, they briefed me what to look for in order to ensure that the animal is okay. And if I see any signs of discomfort, to alert them. And they assigned these animals based on a vulnerability principle. Either they were alone, or they had some health issue, or they were grieving for a family member that they lost recently.
Okay.
Something that potentially could go wrong with them. So my job was to go and observe them, talk to them. Sometimes I would read them the news, or I would sing to them just so they can hear my voice and get to know me. And really, after a few days, they stop treating you as a visitor who is, by definition, a little bit new and suspicious. They start treating you as someone they know, and they display their natural behavior, which is when you are able to see if something is wrong.
Fascinating.
And we were making toys for them as well, the other volunteers. They're called enrichments in animal welfare language, but they're effectively toys.
Okay.
And they're cats, big, but they play exactly the same way like your domestic cat. So we were making toys for them just so that we can kind of increase their sensory kind of diversity, just to do
Yeah.
something different in their day. So we would throw boxes that were full of hay and leaves with some spices inside, like cumin, and you would see the lion devouring a box and putting his nose in the cumin, so because it's a new smell that he doesn't encounter every day. So it was fascinating. These were the kind of things that we were doing, and it was incredible. So I'm very, very grateful that I had the opportunity to do that. And only only if you're on a sabbatical you can go and have the
Mm.
mind space in addition to the time to go and do something like this.
Lucky, but it also sounds as though you were extremely intentional around it, Anna. Around the different three paths, but also then really deeply exploring a path and that animal welfare path. Out of interest, had you heard a lion roar in real life before you arrived in the sanctuary?
I don't think so, to be honest. The lion roar was incredible.
It's amazing, isn't it? I don't think I'll ever forget the first time I heard a lion roar in real life. Like, it just goes through you.
Yes, I've heard it said that it's the loudest sound in the forest,
Yeah, I bet.
the lion roar. And when you have many lions in the same place, they have morning roar and evening roar.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
Lions Rock, this is what they were doing. So sometimes around 5 in the afternoon or 6, I can't remember exactly, one of them would start roaring, and then another one, and then another one from
There'll be a choir. Yeah, incredible.
for about 10 minutes there will be an evening roar.
Incredible, incredible. Yeah, it's the most magical sound and one that just stays with me, like right inside. So you have a month volunteering, and then what?
Then I came back to Bulgaria, which was my base at the time, my home country. I continued applying for jobs basically.
Within animal welfare?
No, both within animal welfare and within and UN agencies.
Okay.
So when I came back from Lions Rock, there were already 8 or 9 months into my sabbatical. So I wanted to start getting organized to go back to work at that point. So I thought, okay, maybe the animal welfare thing didn't work. I had applied for a few jobs, including after I did my 2 volunteering projects, and I continued to not be successful. So I thought maybe it's not the right time. Maybe I need some more time to work on what I do. Maybe I will continue to volunteer. Maybe I will continue to learn on this topic. Eventually, I will transfer, but maybe not now. So I started looking inward in the sense within my organization,
Yeah.
because that was at that point my decision. I will stay with the UN agency I work for. I started again looking for short-term assignments, and I had the opportunity to go to Mozambique. So I spent 3 months in Mozambique, maybe a bit more. So that was another very interesting opportunity that I appreciate as part of my sabbatical, because had I not been on a sabbatical, had this not been a short-term assignment, I wouldn't have taken a job in Mozambique. Not that I have anything against the country. It is just too
Mm,
far for me, for my life, my family. But because it was a short term assignment and because I was on a sabbatical, I was able to go to a place where otherwise I wouldn't have.
yeah, the freedom.
Yes. And also professionally, it was very interesting for me. It was a different role. It was a different context that I had the chance to understand and to learn a little bit about and to contribute, hopefully, with my work. And then I came back from Mozambique, back to Bulgaria. Almost immediately, I had the chance to go for another short-term assignment. This time for the Gaza humanitarian response. And of course, the Gaza response at that time and still today is one of the most meaningful things that you could possibly do as a humanitarian. And
Mm,
having the chance to join the Gaza response was also a privilege for me, because if you're humanitarian, you would want to contribute to something of that proportions. So I had the chance to go there. I went to Amman, which is from where the humanitarian response for Gaza was being managed, and I was there for about 2 months. Interestingly, after this third short-term assignment, I actually was offered a job in Geneva, which is the headquarters. Which is actually, if you go back to my map, it was my goal for the first stream.
for that path.
It was
Yeah.
a plan all along to take several short-term assignments in order to explore different countries, at the same time to have the chance to do my own things, but eventually move to our headquarters. And this is what happened. I actually was offered a job, and I was going to start from January this year. After that, everything fell apart with the cuts in humanitarian funding that started very, very rapidly at the beginning of this year, and basically stopped humanitarian action very abruptly in many places, or decreased it rather. I was not able to go. Just the contract didn't
Wow.
come, which is very understandable. Many people in the humanitarian sector lost their jobs, which is of course not the most tragic thing. The most tragic
Of
thing is that
course.
many people
Yeah.
who rely on humanitarian assistance or need it at the time are left
It's the
without.
knock-on effect. Yeah.
Yes,
So you basically had got and accepted this dream role in headquarters that you had almost plotted out on your map, right?
yes,
Yes. But because of the global political landscape and cuts, it didn't materialize. So it almost was what the role and the position was cut even before you'd started.
exactly. Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. It didn't cause practically to me tremendous inconvenience. There were many people who who lost their jobs and then had to move out of the country that they were in
Yeah, it's that's
with
a
their families. This is a professional field and people will land on their feet. The the biggest problem with this is that there are currently ongoing a number of acute crises where we see
mm.
large scale displacement and immense humanitarian needs. Many of those people are left with very little assistance, much less than they really need and much less than what the humanitarian community can provide. And I think that that's terrible. And this is really the big tragedy of this funding cut. The humanitarian sector perhaps has shrunk by about 30-40% from the beginning of
Yeah,
this year
okay.
until today, and the humanitarian funding appeals are grossly underfunded, which means that many people don't get the assistance they need.
Mm.
So, but back to back to from this grim picture back to my sabbatical. The interesting what happened is that it was over. It wasn't over because I started working again. It was over
Mm.
because I didn't. I had found a job and suddenly I didn't have it anymore. And I thought, am I still on sabbatical then? I didn't feel like I was on a sabbatical anymore because the whole cycle of everything that I had planned for had concluded.
Well, it's not chosen either, is it? It almost is not a choice. It's happening to you.
Yes, exactly. So that's why I felt more unemployed rather than being on sabbatical.
Yeah, yeah.
Although formally I was still on sabbatical.
Wow, okay.
So I started wondering, okay, well, what can I do then?
Sabbatical 2.0.
Yes. So what would be the third thing that I could possibly be doing? So while I was thinking about that, the same organization which runs the sanctuary in South Africa for PAUSE, it's an international organization, opened a position for a program coordinator here in Bulgaria, in my home country, and
Mm.
I applied and they invited me.
Wow.
So this is how I joined the animal welfare movement completely unexpectedly. I had just given up on the idea that this will happen at this time when everything actually came in its place, in a sense. I had closed one door, or rather, it was closed in my face,
Yeah.
but then another door had opened. And it was exactly the one that I had been pursuing, but I had given up on. So I thought that's amazing. So,
And so you got the job? Did
yes,
you have to go through interview process
yes,
and
yes, of course.
apply? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes, they opened the position. I applied. I interviewed. I did a test, and they offered me the position.
Congratulations. Amazing.
Thank you. Yes.
What a magical end to a sabbatical. Like, that is just the weirdest, magical, like, I don't know, 360 confused end I think I've ever heard of a sabbatical.
In fact, it continues in this direction. It was a gift in a sense that, as I said, one door closed and another one opened, and it continued to open because what happened is that joining the animal welfare movement, I realized that there are many topics that you could be working on in order to try to support and alleviate the suffering of animals. Animals suffer in pretty much every species and in every area that humans
Yeah,
are involved,
yeah.
animals suffer. And if as an animal advocate, you need to kind of pick which are your topics
Mm,
that you're the most passionate about and specialize in them.
mm.
To me, the most interesting topic with regards to supporting animals was the one where animals are trapped in crisis, in conflicts, or in extreme weather events, disasters. Because being a humanitarian and coming from a context in which I have seen large scale humanitarian responses. Obviously, we see how it disrupts the life of people. It's very interesting aspect, which is much less discussed. What happens to animals?
I don't think you don't see it, do you? If we think about the news and what we consume about, as an example, the Gaza crisis, of course it makes sense that there are animals in crisis, but we never see that.
No, the Gaza crisis, in addition to all the horrible things that we know have happened to people there, is famous for the extreme conditions and deaths of donkeys. I think the world became a little bit more aware and a bit more sensitive to this as a result of seeing a number of Ukrainian people fleeing Ukraine at the beginning of Russia's war against Ukraine, bringing their pets.
Right.
We saw many images of this because many
Yeah,
Ukrainian
yeah,
people have
yeah.
pets, dogs or cats. Of course, terrible things happen to farm animals and working animals and stray animals as well. But because we saw the Ukrainian pets and this started to be discussed, there is even emergent scholarship on what's happening to animals in conflicts. This is a topic that is a bit more discussed right now. When I joined For Paws Bulgaria, of course, they assigned to me several portfolios, which are very interesting. They're different. I work now on different issues, but my kind of enduring interest is this intersection between humanitarian crisis and the way that crisis affects an entire community and animal welfare. I come from a perspective where I care about what happens to people in crisis who are displaced and might have lost everything. And now I wanted to look at the same contexts, but from the perspective of how they affect animals. After I joined Four Paws in Bulgaria, suddenly, a few months in, the headquarters of the same organization opened a position for someone to work specifically on that portfolio in the department, which is working on rescuing animals in emergencies. So I applied and they offered me the position. And in fact, I'm starting next month. Of course, I'm very grateful and very happy that this happened, that everything evolved this way. But I also feel that it was kind of the gift of my sabbatical that I was able to be very intentional, to concentrate on what I want and to explore a few paths maybe and push both of them simultaneously to the extent to which somehow everything came together in the end.
What an unreal story. Thank you so much for sharing it. I mean, I could talk to you for another hour on, all of the questions I have, but I think what our audience would be super interested in is if people are taking a sabbatical with the intent to do something different and shift into a very different career path or identity, what would your advice be on how they should be spending that sabbatical?
If you have already identified what you want to do, then question of learning, a question of connecting to people who already do this kind of work or work in this sphere that you have identified, identifying what are the skills that you have and experience that you have that is relevant, and identifying, more importantly, what are the gaps in your skill set or your knowledge, and identifying ways to fill them. So I think you're already halfway there if you know exactly what you want. I think understanding where it's the best way for you to go is the difficult part. And now that I think about it, I think that this drawing, this map came from one of the main places it came from would have been a TED talk that I watched. But it's a TED talk given, it's called, I wrote it down, 5 Steps to Designing the Life You Want.
Okay.
It's a TED talk given by Bill Burnett, who is a
Yeah.
professor at Stanford University, and together with a colleague, they designed this model. He basically encourages people to explore several potential futures and to prototype them, to do some low risk experiences, low risk engagement with that possible version of themselves or of their life, so that they can understand whether this is what they really want. You don't really need a lot of clarity. It's the clarity that is your power to to start exploring. So you don't need to already have the clarity.
Mm.
This is what I would suggest to people who haven't decided.
And I feel as though we've gone full circle, because in our second ever episode of Sabbatical Stories, Steve Duke suggested Bill Burnett and Dave Evans' book, Design Your Life. It's such a good book. And they also have a Design Your Work Life follow-up book. So they've written a sort of follow-up, because there was so much interest in Design Your Life, but then there were so many questions around, this is all great, but what about when I've got commitments, and this is all quite blue sky thinking. And so they brought out a subsequent second book called Design Your Work Life, which is also a fascinating read, and really tactical. You can put the sort of hints and tips and frameworks into play, and follow them. So that's so interesting that is your read, watch, or listen suggestion. Season 4, I am closing with a couple of fast fire questions. One is a read, watch, or listen recommendation, which obviously you've covered. The second is, what did you value before your sabbatical that you don't now?
I think it's not that I don't value it anymore, but something that I was holding on to, perhaps. I valued very much my identity as not only as a humanitarian worker, but as a UN staff member. Because you see, being a humanitarian worker is a calling. It's not a job. Although I don't work in humanitarian settings anymore, I think to a certain extent, I will always feel like I'm a humanitarian worker who is just now doing something else. I think I had started feeling very comfortable with being a UN staff member, because also because people look at you a little bit differently when you say you work for the UN, because of the respect for the institution. You start feeling that your value comes from the fact that you work for the UN, and not because you bring something. So I think that was a learning point for me. That's something that I kind of let go of, because I found out my own way to reframe my own work as a professional for myself in my own eyes. Yeah, as I said, it's not that I don't value it anymore, but I found a way to find my own professional value beyond that.
And on the contrary, what do you value now that you didn't back then?
Now what I value is a certain aspect of the freedom that I gained during my sabbatical. And when I say freedom, I don't mean free time to do whatever I want, but I mean the freedom to explore different things, to learn, to pursue different intellectual goals, to start different hobbies, if you will. Before, I was very dedicated to my work. I was only doing my work because I loved it. And being a humanitarian is such a worthy profession that you don't feel that you need to do. At least I didn't feel like I needed to do something else, because that was fulfilling not only my time, but it was fulfilling my need to contribute to society in a way. Now I found the value of doing other things and being interested in different topics, engaging with different people from different professional areas, and I will continue to definitely look for side things to do, because I find them enriching.
And finally, very quickly, your top 3 tips generally for anybody taking a sabbatical or currently on a career break.
Okay, my first tip is that they shouldn't expect for anyone to make this decision for them or to give them clarity. They shouldn't expect family members or friends to somehow facilitate it out of them to help them make this decision. I would recommend really to either do it yourself or to find a career coach, because that, at least for me, that was very useful. Within one session, I felt like I have clarity that I didn't have before, simply because I found a mirror rather than someone who supports me. And the second one is also drawing on my experience, is to set clear goals. There are a variety of reasons why someone takes a sabbatical, and that translates into what will be your goals and what you want to do during your sabbatical. Everyone should set their own clear goals what do they want out of their sabbatical. And if you put yourself 1 year from now or whatever, 6 months or 1.5 years from now, at the end of your sabbatical, and you imagine that you're there and you look back, what do you wish for to have achieved, to have learned, to have experienced? It's a very precious time. If you are able to take a sabbatical, you will probably not be able to take it in the next 5 years or 10. It's a very, very valuable, precious gift.
Thank you so much. And Anna, thank you for coming on and sharing what is, I think, one of the most magical sabbatical stories I've ever witnessed, or the end, should I say, because I think they're all magical in their own right. But that end, what a twist, that could be a movie. That could be a sabbatical story movie. I absolutely love it. Amazing. So thank you for coming on and sharing with me and the listeners. If anybody wants to get in touch and chat to you or find out more, where's the best place to connect with you?
I'm very active on LinkedIn. Anyone can find me there. My name is Anna Izvorska.
We'll put it in the show notes so that it's spelled right.
I know, Slavic name.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks, Bex. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Show them your smile. You won't believe things for a while. And taking matters into your own hands, you won't believe that you're making headway.
Thanks so much for listening, and a huge thank you to Anna for sharing her magical story. Anna's journey reminds us that even the most mission and purpose-driven careers can benefit from a pause. As always, a huge thanks to Auntie B at the Flaxen, my incredible patient and talented producer. To Nikki Sweetland, our brilliant creative force behind all things social and visual. And to Joe Cook, whose soulful vocals we're so lucky to feature through the podcast. If you loved this episode and know somebody who'd love it too, please send it their way. Share the link, pop it in a group chat, forward it to that friend who's always talking about quitting their job. And please do us a massive favour. Hit follow, give the show a rating and leave a quick review. It genuinely makes a huge difference and it helps more people discover these powerful stories. The more we share them, the more we normalise taking brave, intentional breaks. And if you've got a story of your own, or you know somebody who does, please reach out. We are Sabbatical Stories Podcast on Instagram, or connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm Bex Thomas. Until next time, take care of yourself, keep dreaming big, and remember, your sabbatical story might just be the key to your next chapter.